Hello, and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview, where we look at the stories being followed in this week's North Coast Journal. I'm your host, Dave Frank, and I'm here in the studio with Thad Greenson, news editor, and Jennifer Fumiko Cahill, the arts and features editor from North Coast Journal. Hello and welcome, guys.
Hi.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for joining me here today again this week. Let's dive right in and talk about this week's journal. Thad, what's on the cover this week?
This week's cover story is about a fired Eureka police officer. So I think a couple months back, we talked about Senate Bill 1421, which came into effect in California, and how it changed the laws that govern police officer personnel records.
Right.
And so California, for decades, had kind of some of the strictest laws in the country about who could access police officer personnel files and disciplinary records and why. And those laws have changed now. And so records of investigations of officers-involved shootings, of sustained allegations of dishonesty, and sustained allegations of sexual assault are all now open to the public.
And this was as of last year, is that right?
Yeah, this came into effect beginning of last year, and it has, because there's no, it was retroactive. So there's no start date. It goes back from time immemorial, basically. And so it puts a ton of pressure on small departments especially to go through all these records, and they have to redact certain information and stuff like that, which is why the records are still trickling out. They didn't all immediately come out as of January 1st, 2019. So in that vein, we had submitted a bunch of requests to local agencies, and the Eureka Police Department just recently got us its latest release, which is an internal affairs investigation into allegations of sexual battery against former officer Mike Stelzig.
Oh, wow.
And he was fired. The allegations were sustained by the department, and he was fired.
Amazing. So can you share a little bit more about the backstory?
Yeah.
How it came to be that, the police department, in theory, police departments are on top of these things and taking action and doing the right thing all the time, but people sort of have this suspicion that maybe that's not the case, but it sounds like it was here.
It absolutely was here, and that's one of the reasons, well, we would have felt it important to report on it regardless, but it's definitely a story that I think should give people some faith that EPD is taking these things seriously. So the way this came about is actually one of Officer Stelzig was accused of battering two women at a social function. And one of them was the wife of a fellow EPD officer. And so this woman confided in her husband after the event, and he came forward to the superior and said, hey, there's this thing that happened, it was off duty, but I think you guys need to know about it. EPD kind of immediately launched a formal investigation, both a criminal investigation and internal affairs investigation. And as I said, essentially sustained findings that he had behaved in a predatory manner and touched two women in very inappropriate ways. Like I said, EPD took it very seriously. They actually did refer it to the Humboldt County District Attorney's Office to press criminal charges. District Attorney declined because the women who had been assaulted said they didn't want the case to proceed. They didn't want to participate.
Well, that's unfortunate, but I guess justice did prevail in the sense that he was removed from his position. Mm-hmm. So in the article, I recall that there was some sort of insights and expert advice from a local entity about how to respond in situations like this, if you ever see one? Yeah.
So one of the things that I thought was compelling about reading through the investigative file was reading this interview with the officer who reported the assault or the assaults, and he. It was honestly really frustrating and kind of painful reading his relaying of events. And basically he said, as I said, he was kind of unaware of what had happened with his wife at this social gathering, but had witnessed Officer Stelzig's interactions with another woman there, and said that he didn't see anything that really crossed the line into sexual assault or battery, but saw Officer Stelzig behaving in kind of a predatory way. He said, I think the words he used to describe it was he was bird dogging this woman. And was kind of very handsy with her, was constantly kind of cornering her at this gathering. And
cornering her meaning like he had his arm up at one point and she was like
against the wall and was like leaning in to talk to her in a way that she couldn't kind of escape the situation. Mm-hmm. At other points he had his arm around her and stuff. And so it was kind of, the officer was clearly very uncomfortable with it and felt
Right.
like there was bad things happening, or it was at least, moving in the direction where something very bad could happen. But he never intercedes. And so I wanted to talk about that and a number of other things. So I reached out to Paula Aerosmith-Jones with the North Coast Rape Crisis Team, which is a wonderful local resource. Their hotline number is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's in this week's journal. So if you feel like you need any help or counseling, please call them. And she wouldn't talk to me specifically about Officer Stelzig's case, but talked to me very generally about these things, and said that they teach a course to high school classes and up at HSU about how bystanders can intervene in these types of situations in a way that's comfortable to them. And so it's the 3 Ds: direct, deflect, and delegate. And so the first is direct. It's just going up to a guy who's behaving inappropriately and saying, "Hey, knock it off. You're doing something bad. Stop it." And kind of just directly interjecting yourself into the situation. The other is deflect or distract, and it's basically, kind of not hitting the situation head on, but removing one of the people involved from the situation. So in this case, it could have been him going up and saying, "Hey, Mike, I need to talk to you about this something, or I wanted to show you this thing on my car," or something like that. And just kind of removing him from the situation, giving the other person involved the space to leave, to find another group to hang out with, so they're not isolated, whatever the case may be, or distracting the person who kind of removing the person who is being the subject of a predator's attention, and saying, "Hey, so and so, remember we were going to talk about this thing. I need to talk to you," and kind of removing them from the situation. And then the third is delegating, is when you really don't know what to do, you're really uncomfortable interceding, just going to somebody else and saying, "Hey, this thing is happening. It's making me uncomfortable. I don't know what to do. Help me."
Those are pretty useful tools and relatively easy to remember.
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
it stands out.
I think, the thing that while I was reading Thad's draft of this story made me shout through the walls at him was the same thing, that frustrating read of this officer's testimony about seeing this woman who was clearly uncomfortable. At one point he says the expression on her face was hilarious. From the point of view of the woman in that situation, I can tell you it's not hilarious.
Right.
And his thought was, well, she's not attacking him. She hasn't, hit him in the groin with her knee, so she's okay. And, women are, in a lot of situations, we're trying to gauge our own safety.
Right.
And we are not, all of us, prepared to take on a large, trained in combat man in a public place where it could go super badly for us.
Totally.
And so it was actually really, I was so happy to see that Thad had put that information from, an expert saying, here's something you can do, practical advice, because, how many times have we heard about a situation where everybody's kind of frozen, no one knows what to do, and no one wants to be the person to step forward or do something, and it isn't always a moment where you have to go and, fight somebody.
Right.
Yeah, so I was really gratified to see that all explained.
I mean, plus in this instance, it's particularly compelling that the person was a police officer. And you had mentioned that it's for conduct that occurred outside of his professional, formal capacity. And that sort of reinforces my understanding. It's like, whenever you see a police officer, whether they're working or not working, you sort of feel like, well, I'm not necessarily the right person to intervene when I see him acting inappropriately, or her, I guess, acting inappropriately. But like this article kind of points out that there's techniques, no matter who it is. And more importantly, I think the article points out that the public is really important. Public perceptions are really important to the chief of police and the police department, and the vast majority of all the police officers would prefer that you actually did something or said something.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's compelling.
Yeah, Chief Steve Watson made great pains to kind of tell me that officers are never really off duty. Their conduct is always reflecting on the profession and the department that they work for, and that's part of why the reason they took this case so seriously.
Well, that's great. This is a really cool article, and thank you for sharing it.
Thanks.
How about you, Jennifer? What's going on the arts and features beat?
Well, you know, this week I did a little film reviewing. Well, not exactly film. I went on a Netflix binge.
Okay. They're winning awards.
They're winning. They count.
Right.
They count now. We're all streaming. So the series that I binged on is called Virgin River, and it is set in Humboldt County.
Oh, wow, cool.
I know. It's not, don't worry, it's not another Murder Mountain documentary.
Oh, geez.
It's okay. It isn't that bad, but it is it worse? No.
It's kind of the opposite.
It's kind of the opposite.
Oh.
Because, so it's based off of a series of novels by a very popular romance novelist named Robin Carr. And she's got I don't know, is it like a dozen Virgin River novels about a fictional town. There is no Virgin River. Don't look for it. Don't try to hike there. But it's in the very, very real Humboldt County.
Oh, cool.
And that means that there are subplots about what they refer to as an illegal pot grow.
Oh.
There are all kinds of little moments of, you know, rural life, and I think the vibe of it is sort of like a southern Humboldt, very rural place where everybody knows each other. They refer to Eureka as the city.
Oh, gee.
So it's, you know, you get a sense of it, but weirdly, at least I haven't read the novels, so I can't speak to the novels. But weirdly, in the series on Netflix, it is so utterly bland, my God.
Oh, no.
There's nobody weird. Imagine Humboldt with nobody weird. Imagine Humboldt with nobody who has like a weird hobby. I literally know a woman who has a blog devoted to adaptations of Three Musketeers movies. Like,
Oh.
that's her jam.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
what she does. So, you know, I know people who make like spoon sculptures. I know a person who makes recycled tiki lamps out of cardboard. There are interesting, creative, weird people here, and they have layers. They have pasts that are odd, and you know, they come from one very set career path and switch to another one, or they've been here forever and they have stories. But the people in Virgin River are bland, like
Oh, no.
low sodium chicken broth. It's very hard. And you know, everybody's, I don't know how to say this exactly, which is terrible because I had to. Everybody's working very hard. All these actors, bless them, they're trying so hard, but they have nothing to work with.
Oh, man.
You know, there's the central romance for which the protagonist, the young woman who is a nurse practitioner, midwife. Please, God, make it come true. Make a nurse practitioner midwife move up to Humboldt. She gets here and the doctor doesn't want her, which the least believable
Right.
the least believable plot line you could ever have in Humboldt County. So nobody wants her here. Everybody's like, you're city soft. And it's just the most kind of patronizing city mouse, country mouse kind of stuff. Like, we don't need outsiders telling us to call social services when someone abandons a baby. It's a crazy, crazy interpretation of rural life. And of course, the protagonist is disgustingly perfect. So perfect
no.
that there's just nothing to do with her. She has, you know, some secrets in the form of a troubled past, but she's utterly perfect and utterly unrelatable and not anywhere near as interesting as the people that actually live here.
That is an unfortunate non-endorsement of the series.
Yes, you can skip it. Maybe fast forward to see the grow in the snow.
Oh. Do we see any Humboldt at all?
There are some rivers that look like Humboldt, but it's British Columbia.
Oh, one of them.
Yeah, it's Canada.
Film commission. We did need to do a little bit more work, maybe.
I don't know that we want to own this one.
Oh, okay, good. This was a good
Thank
skip.
you, Film Commission.
Right.
Let it go. Gotta
Good
let a
eye,
few
good
go.
eye. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Well, is there anything else you guys want to mention about this issue?
I think we have a really good couple of crab recipes from Wendy Chan. So
Yum.
if you are reveling in the crab that is available to us now, and you should be eating crab all season. You should not just have your, you know, the season has started crab sandwich and then forget about it until summer. Eat crab all season. My God, we have it. It's wonderful. And Wendy has a couple of recipes, one being for crab cheese puffs.
Okay.
Just look amazing.
They are amazing. She brought them into the office when Thad was not in.
Oh, Thad.
Still mad. He should be mad. It was terrible of us. We enjoyed them all. But these are fantastic and just bursting with picked crab instead of being a cheese puff with a couple of strands indicating that crab was in the room. They're wonderful. It's a great recipe and it's fairly simple to do.
Even better.
And she also has a crab egg foo young, which those of you who love egg foo young and you've been shamed because it's a Chinese American dish, and you feel like, oh, it's not cool and, I don't know, authentic and up to date. It's amazing. It's delicious. We love it. That's why we ate it for 100 years.
Excellent.
We're bringing it back with crab, and it's very good. We ate that too. I'm so sorry.
Humboldt fusion. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, this is great. This is awesome. North Coast Journal on newsstands now for free. Pick one up. Stay informed. Thank you guys very much, and I look forward to talking to you again next week.
Right on.
Great. Thanks, David.